The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Tony Mecia, and you're listening to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. You can find out more about the Charlotte Ledger and sign up for our newsletters at thecharlotteledger.com. Our newsletters, by the way, are jam-packed with original and insightful information about Charlotte. Today's podcast is a recording of a panel I moderated on the economy and economic development at the Canopy Expo, which was a gathering of realtors at the Charlotte Convention Center on September 9th. It was a robust discussion of the economy, housing, and the outlook in Charlotte, York County, and the Asheville area. The panel consisted of Tracy Dodson of the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, Dean Faile of the York County Regional Chamber of Commerce, and Kit Cramer of the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. And our thanks to Canopy Realtor Association for the invitation and for allowing us to release the discussion on the Charlotte Ledger podcast. Now, before we get into the discussion, I want to tell you that this podcast is proudly sponsored by AC Creative Collective. Founded by sisters Amora and Avery Carter, known as AC Squared, they specialize in marketing services, strategy, and learning and development. Whether it's crafting impactful marketing strategies, managing complex projects, or launching standout training, they handle every detail so you can focus on what you do best. Learn more and book a consultation at accreativecollective.com. Okay, let's get to the economic panel discussion.
Good afternoon. This is your captain. We are approaching our final education destination of the day. Please direct your attention to our in-flight education screen, where Charisma Sutherland, your 2025 Canopy Realtor Association, Canopy MLS, and Canopy Housing Foundation President, will help describe our final leg of the journey.
Good afternoon and welcome back. This is our last education session of the day, and we are bringing in the landing with a panel of local leaders talking about certainly affecting all of us in this real estate rapid growth. Welcome to you all. Before I turn the floor over to Tony Mecia, who will navigate our panel today, I want to make sure we have, and you all know, do you know what comes after this session? Happy hour. So I want to make sure everybody knows that happy hour is on the expo floor immediately following this panel discussion. We also owe a big thank you to our Canopy Expo education sponsor, CRS Data. Please join me in welcoming Rob Williamson on the stage. Come on up and say a few words.
Okay. Hello. Hey, it works. Okay, thank you so much. I won't say a whole lot just because I know everybody is ready to get down to the bar, so I can appreciate that. I live in Spartanburg, which isn't too far away, and so my wife is really upset because she's wanting to go to South Park Mall. Last time we were there was one store she dropped a lot of money in on, and it's got something to do with handbags and things, so I said, no, we got to be at 6 o'clock in the morning. They don't open that early, so anyway. Okay, so CRS is launching today. We are connected with Paragon Connect for another public record outlet for you. Just a couple things about us. The searches are real easy to do. If you can, come down to our booth at C16. Stop by and see us. And by the way, a lot of the y'all that are out here, I saw y'all came by our booth, and we really appreciate it. But we just appreciate the sponsorship. We are excited to get integrated with you for public records. A couple things you will do are foreclosure searches. You'll now have access to counties in all states, or all counties in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. And so we are really excited about providing all this information for you. So again, thanks. Please come down and say hello. And without further ado, the panel take over.
Thank you, Rob and CRS Data for sponsoring this education session. Now it's my pleasure to tell you about our esteemed moderator, Tony Mecia, the founder and executive editor of the Charlotte Ledger, a digital business publication that covers business news and other local topics. He is the former business editor and reporter for the Charlotte Observer, where he received the national awards for coverage on textile and airline industries. A journalist in Charlotte for more than 25 years, his writing has appeared in publications including the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. And he appears weekly on the local NPR station, WFAE, to discuss Charlotte area business news. Serving on the panel is Kit Cramer, President and CEO, Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber in North Carolina with over 1,600 members and at a $4.2 million budget. The organization serves as the lead economic development agency for Buncombe County, the city of Asheville. Then we have Tracy Finch Dodson, is the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Economic Development for the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. In her role, Tracy oversees economic development, research, marketing, communication, business development, and investor relations for the organization. And L. Dean Faile, who has led York County Regional Chamber of Commerce since June 2021, following 13 years as president and CEO of the Lancaster County Chamber. A former business owner, he operated one of South Carolina's first one-hour photo finishing centers for 17 years and was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Photo Marketing Magazine. We appreciate all of our panelists' time today. So, Tony, it's wings up and let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And if I can just borrow from the flight metaphor, buckle in, because we've got a great panel for you today, really discussing a very important topic to our region and to the Carolinas. And we're going to be talking about growth. It's no secret that this area has seen a lot of growth. We're going to talk about sort of what that looks like, how that's manifesting itself, what those challenges are, and how our regions are overcoming some of those challenges. We've got a great panel, really with their fingers on the pulse of making that happen. I was traveling last week for work to a large Midwestern city that I won't name, and I walked out of the hotel, went to go get some dinner, and I was really struck by the fact that in this city, it was just very quiet. It wasn't that it was seedy or dangerous, but it just felt very empty. Went to a restaurant, a bunch of restaurants. They were all empty. And it was just so far removed from the experience that I have here in the Charlotte region where, and not just Charlotte, but you go anywhere and it's very vibrant and it's very robust and there are people, whether it's Huntersville or Concord or Mount Holly, Belmont, Indian Land, Fort Mill, Union County. Our region is really just taking off with growth. And it's not without its challenges. It creates some challenges. And maybe some people have dealt with some of these challenges today, like traffic, getting here, getting around, mobility, schools, infrastructure. So I'm really excited about our discussion today because these three people to my left are really very much involved in a lot of these conversations and a lot of the policy and decisions that are being made around growth and how that affects all of our lives. Tracy, I'd like to start with you. The Charlotte Regional Business Alliance recently, in the last few weeks, everybody always wants to know the number. How many people, what's the number? Tracy, what's the number? How many people are moving to our region every day? The number that you all came up with was 157. It was 117 a year ago. This is migration data from the census that your organization analyzed. Give us a little bit of background on not just the number, but what does that represent? Who is moving here? Why are they moving here?
So the 157, just to put it for a 14 county area for the Alliance is 4 counties in South Carolina and 10 counties in North Carolina. That represents 57,000 people a year coming to this region. And that's a scary number, but I think it reflects, Tony, what you were saying, which is the vibrant community that we have built and all parts of it, right? There's something going on everywhere. And so what we see is that the talent wants to come here. I've been in this market for 30 years. And, when I was here, you didn't go to college and then come to Charlotte. You went to college and you went somewhere else, and then you might find your way back to Charlotte. Now people are coming here. They're coming here at all ages, and that reflects that number.
And I mean, are you saying all ages? I mean, I know we certainly see South End. You see a lot of Gen Z and millennials moving here. They get a lot of the attention, but maybe expand on that a little bit. Where are these people coming from? Who are they?
So we definitely have a migration from the Northeast. I think we all know that. 6,500 people a year come from the New York area. One of the interesting facts now that we have about 1,100 people a year coming from Atlanta. So Atlanta's losing population to us. Then what we have is what we fondly call our halfbacks, the people who were up in the Northeast, went to Florida, and now they're finding their way back to Charlotte, with a migration from the Florida as well. The new one that I love and I pay the most attention to, which is California. When we're pitching companies that are coming to and looking at the Charlotte market, if they're from the West Coast, I always have to start with we're sophisticated. We don't wear overalls and straw hats anymore. We've grown into ourselves. But to now see a migration of 1,500 people a year that are coming from Southern California to this market starts to say a lot about the community that we've built.
And Dean, you all are a part of this region, York County. Seen a lot of growth in York County. What are you all seeing as far as the growth? Who's coming here? Why are they coming here? And what does it mean for your area?
Yes, the growth certainly coming. I kind of chuckle. One of the stats that we often brag about is we're one of the fastest growing counties in the country. I think all 14 counties in the Charlotte MSA claim the same thing, and it's true. We're right now 303,000 in the county, expected to double in the next 25 years. And we have a strong retirement population, which kind of adds to the need of some of our critical needs with healthcare and that sort of thing. But certainly, what we're seeing is the pressure it's putting on our infrastructure, our roads, water management, power supply. You can just go down the list. Everything is reaching that more and more, approaching a critical point of, okay, how do we continue to sustain this amount of growth that we've got to ramp up a lot of things in that infrastructure space.
And what are people moving here for? Why are they all moving here?
It sounds cliche, Tony, but it certainly is the quality of life. For York County, I think a lot of folks move into York County, certainly in the Fort Mill area for our K through 12 education system. Fort Mill has the strongest and number one school district in the country, has for a number of years. The surrounding school districts, while they're not ranked that high, are very competitive because when you have one doing that well, the others also do well. So we have a lot of strong education opportunities right here. The proximity to Charlotte, to be able to, from York County, to be able to drive into downtown Charlotte in 30 minutes, catch a ball game, catch an arts event, and then be back home that evening and not have to necessarily spend the night is very attractive to folks. So we see that. But we also see the growth as Tracy says, the talent. People are moving here for jobs. We have had great success in South Carolina and in the whole Charlotte region with advanced manufacturing, high tech, healthcare. Tracy mentioned the Pearl earlier. Just things of that nature. It's just a magnet for a wide variety of folks.
Kit, you're in the Asheville area, Buncombe County, the mountains. What are you seeing up there? And, I know it's also hard to have this discussion without talking about the elephant in the room, which is the hurricane that hit almost a year ago. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing, growth in the Asheville area, and sort of how that's been affected more recently.
Our growth in Asheville and Buncombe County is not as fast as it has been here in Charlotte, but it's been a great, steady growth. And yeah, we kind of are of two minds about everything these days. We're about business as usual. I drove out of Asheville today. Fall is already beginning in Asheville, and we're seeing a little bit of color, and it has been cool and crisp, and it's gorgeous. But I live in Swannanoa, and Swannanoa was one of the hardest areas. It was ground zero for our water system to have been ripped right out of the ground. In 2.5 weeks, we will have reached the 1 year mark. there is still a tremendous amount to be done in places like Swannanoa and in the lower part of the River Arts District. But there are other areas in Asheville that you would never know that the storm had occurred. So we invite you back, oh, by the way, because we missed all of fall last year, which was incredibly hard on our tourism industry, retail, things of that nature. So we're doing these parallel paths of recovery, but also business as usual. And frankly, we are sick of storm discussion. I can't wait for September to be over and for us to be past that 1 year mark, but it will be with us for a while. We're going to have to persist in looking for federal and state assistance because there are still some incredibly hard hit areas that we've never anticipated. This state has never had anything like what occurred with us last year.
And how would you characterize the growth in the Asheville area? I mean, typically you think, oh, it's people retiring up to the mountains, and certainly that there must be some of that. But what are you seeing as far as the growth?
Well, we get a lot of people from the rest of North Carolina, which is great. We are happy to be a recipient of any donations of talent that y'all want to send our way. And while we've had strong growth, we see a lot of people out of California and New York. I'm from Florida originally, and there are a lot of Floridians. I see gator tags all over cars everywhere. And so there are lots of people who are coming in. We've seen a little bit of change in terms of there are a lot of people who come and buy homes and will use them for Airbnb. And we've seen some fall off of Airbnb since the storm. And there are some houses that are going back on the market, which we need housing stock at every income level. So we are happy to see that stock come back online. And otherwise, when I talk with folks about the economy, they'll say things are good. They're not as bad as we thought they were going to be, but they're not as good as we want them to be. So we're coming back. It's going to be a process, and we're all going to have to be a little bit more patient. That does not mean y'all should be patient, though. You should go ahead and come to Asheville now and bring all the money you have in your pockets.
Okay, a shameless plug for Asheville there. I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that growth creates. And certainly, I think most people in this room are happy about the pace of growth. We've got new people coming in. It's like I say, it's a vibrant area, which is much better than the alternative, which is being a stagnant area in decline. But it does bring its challenges. And I would just ask each of you, what are you seeing as far as the major challenges in your area? Whoever would like to take that.
So I'll start with the obvious. If anybody's from the Charlotte area, it's transportation and mobility. We said 157 people a day. If you just do some basic math on that, that's, if we said 57,000 people a year, that could roughly be, if we didn't invest in our infrastructure and only invested in roads, it could be 35,000 cars a year added to the Charlotte region. And that's staggering. And so we have to stay ahead of that. We are fortunate here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg specifically that we started this in the 90s and continue to try to build out our transportation system. But if we don't stay ahead of it now, we're not going to keep up with the growth at the pace the growth is happening. So I think that is probably the biggest thing for us.
And to follow up with that, in York County, we started 28 years ago with adding additional 1 penny sales tax for road improvement. And it's known as pennies for progress. When you drive across the North Carolina into South Carolina, you actually find that 77 widens, and everybody goes, how can that be? It should be the other way around. And that's a result of that penny sales tax. We've collected over $1 billion at this point over the last 28 years, one of the first counties in the Southeast to do it. So that's been important. But Tony, I think the other thing that we see with the growth, and this is something that should concern everyone in the room, is when you sell a house to somebody that just moved here, then they show up at county council the next month and they say, hey, don't let anybody else in, I've made it. And And that's a real challenge, because we see communities regularly put in moratoriums, and they'll always say, well, we're just going to do it for 6 months or a year until we're ready for the next wave of growth. They're never going to catch up. They're never going to be ready for the next wave. And we can't allow our cities and our municipalities to stifle the number of houses that we need. Y'all know that, and you see it firsthand. It creates a ripple effect. It creates challenges as prices go up. Then we have our workforce housing issues. We have people that are commuting farther and farther to work, particularly if you get into western York County, more rural. You'll talk to some of the citizens that live there. Their average commute can be 55 to 60 minutes one way. And we see that, exacerbated if you move on into Chester and Lancaster counties. So those are real challenges. The next thing I would say, which should be a rallying cry for all of us, it seems that when everybody moves in, they automatically join an association called NIMBY, Not in My Backyard. And that's also, the thing that we see more and more as more subdivisions butt up against historic industrial parks or business parks. All of a sudden, somebody will look out after they have a child and they'll go, oh, wow, wait a minute. What does that manufacturing facility that's been there for the last 30 years, what exactly are they producing? What are they doing? Could that cause harm to my child? I understand the fear, but as a community, we have to figure out how we can effectively communicate when people move in, what's in their surrounding area, that it is safe. It's been safe, that these companies, in most cases, are very responsible in doing the right things. I think that's something that we've all got to work on together.
Yeah, I mean, I go to a lot of these community meetings for rezonings where, people typically in single-family homes will be opposing, they want to build a big apartment complex next to me. And the thing they always say is, I'm not opposed to apartment complexes per se, but the infrastructure can't handle it. It's dumping onto a 2-lane road, the schools are overcrowded, and it's not without merit, although they probably also don't want to live next to an apartment complex. But I think those are real concerns about infrastructure. But yeah, it's how do we keep that momentum going? What are you seeing up in the Asheville area, which I know is known to be very, shall we say, politically involved?
Yeah, you could say that. NIMBYs are the bane of my existence. We have we need more housing, period. We need more workforce housing. We also have a situation where we've now lost housing stock because of the storm. So it's a unique opportunity. I'm looking for silver linings in everything. We see it as an opportunity, though, to encourage the permitting process to move more quickly. We've been pushing for a change in our Unified Development Ordinance that had gotten resistance about doing that, to simplify the process for construction and building and permitting. And now that there's a shift. There's been an attitudinal shift and a shift in what being nimble looks like. And I'm excited about that. So we're going to seize that opportunity to try and get more development, especially density and corridors for us. We are landlocked. So we've got beautiful mountains and rivers that y'all should come see and spend money on. And but as a result of that, that means that we've got fewer and fewer places, large tracts of land that's not flat. There's rock under there. It's difficult. And as a result, our cost of construction are higher. Our cost of living then is impacted by our cost of housing. So it's all got a ripple effect. But we've got to double down and get more housing built so that we can attract talent and retain them in the area, because people want to be in Asheville. It is a cool place. It is literally and figuratively cool. And we continue to be a very attractive place where you can, lead a cosmopolitan lifestyle in a very small package.
We'll be right back to the discussion. But first, I want to remind you that this episode of the Charlotte Ledger podcast is brought to you by AC Creative Collective. Based in Charlotte, North Carolina, AC Creative Collective specializes in end-to-end marketing and learning and development services. They are dedicated to helping businesses and organizations streamline their operations and achieve their goals with creativity and precision. From social media strategies to workshops and brand launches, they've got you covered. Visit www.accreativecollective.com to learn more. I appreciate the subliminal or not so subliminal messaging on visiting Asheville and opening your wallets. But you two mentioned something I think I'd like to dig into a little bit more, which is housing affordability. I think the statistics that are on the screen show that in each of your communities,
Dean beats us, and I'm glad to say that.
that the median sales prices are in the 400s, I believe.
You're 450, he's 455.
So, I mean, you know, and for people who are starting out, for those millennials buying that first home, I mean, that's a big pill to swallow. How are your communities dealing with this question of housing affordability and trying to make sure that, and it relates also to transportation, like you were talking about, Tracy, where it's like if people have to move farther and farther out to get the house that they want, you know, that affects how people get around. How are your communities trying to address that?
So I think for Charlotte, I want to step back, and we really look at this as the three legs of the stool. It's mobility that we hit. It's the affordability on the housing piece of it, and then it's the jobs. And my time in working for the city, it was all trying to keep all three of those together at the same time. Charlotte's mayor, who's been in for 8 years now, when she came in originally, pushed really hard to up the affordable housing bonds up to $50 million. Last year, it was 2 years ago, she took that to $100 million. And so the public sector really showing the support for affordability gives her then the leverage to go to the private sector and say, hey, you need to lean into this as well. And so what I think that's really led to, while we're not out of the woods by any means, we have to stay ahead of it, is that public-private partnership that really helps the investments, helps the thinking towards affordability. The last thing I'll say is that as we recruit companies, one of the things I pay a lot of attention to, if I go back 8 years ago when we recruit a company, they wanted to look through neighborhoods and really dig into housing prices per neighborhood and things like that. Now companies come here and they say, well, we know the talent is here, but then what they want to know is the affordability, Tony, to your point, isn't 45 minutes away, that there's a diversity of housing types and prices within a range of where they want to locate. And that's more of where we spend our time now, is saying that you can live within 15 minutes of uptown, and here's what that pricing looks like. One side it might be expensive, the other side it might not. But really trying to show that we have the diversity of housing types and prices.
So one thing we're doing right now in partnership with our Catawba Council of Governments is a workforce housing study in our 4-county region. That includes York, Chester, Lancaster, and Union County, South Carolina. What we're trying to determine is, what's that missing component, on the lower side, the middle side, and where it exists most. From that, we have plans for a secondary action, if you will, not necessarily a study, but we'll analyze solutions that are popping up across the country so that we can then take those, to our leaders, to our community leaders, and start to implement, hopefully, strategies to kind of address some of these challenges. Some of the early samples or examples that we see, Fairfield County, South Carolina, has a teacher's village, and that's a partnership with some private developers and the education system. There's a real appetite for that, particularly in the Fort Mill and Rock Hill school districts, to do that sort of thing. A unique example that we recently saw was in Aspen, Colorado, where Aspen, Colorado the city partnered with a local developer who built an apartment complex right beside the fire station. And they provided housing for all the firemen that worked there. Well, the cool thing is the firemen no longer have to sleep there at the firehouse. They can actually sleep at home, be there, and it gives them an opportunity to essentially kind of have a second gig, job online if they want to. But think about how attractive that is to a young couple that's going to get subsidized housing, and it's right there, and they can kind of stay right there together. Those are the sort of solutions that I think we're going to have to work on together as communities.
We're working on density in corridors and the missing middle. So more duplexes, triplexes, condos, things of that nature that will provide more opportunity for more folks. And our county is working on a project called Ferry Road right now that is adjacent to this new industrial park that we were so lucky to have Pratt & Whitney land in as the first occupants of this new industrial park called Biltmore Park West. And in fact, Pratt & Whitney has already announced an expansion. It will be over $1 billion in capital expenditures, as well, and 1,000 jobs between the two projects that they've now announced for the Asheville area. So Ferry Road is focused on workforce housing and also trying to provide a very complete living experience with childcare, with opportunities for education that are located near there, and comprehensive transit as well. So we think that's going to be a great example of the type of work, and I commend the county for being leaders in that regard. We've also, though, got to really stiffen our backbones against NIMBYism and go for YIMBYs in terms of establishing density where it makes sense along our corridors.
So what are that brings up, I think, a good point. What are some of the policy issues? And you mentioned, the local governments. I think there are probably things the state government could be doing. What are some of the initiatives that you're working on that might help on this issue of housing and housing affordability?
Well, I'll jump in first. Two things. I mean, in South Carolina, our commercial property tax rate is higher than any in the region, in the Charlotte MSA. And that creates a real challenge. A developer looking to build apartment complexes, that property tax, he could build the same apartment complex in Gaston, Union County, Mecklenburg County, and the cost per rent per month can be as much as $1,000 or $1,000 a year lower. Same thing with childcare. We have developers that can build a childcare facility in York County or Lancaster County or put it across the state line, and that cost per child averages $1,000 more per year for that child in the same exact size footprint. So what we're looking to do is put some exemptions in place, or either lower that tax rate for commercial properties that address a certain percentage of affordable housing units and or for affordable childcare, and make that more available.
We also have a housing trust fund that helps provide matches for construction of housing, and the incorporation also of a federal program that will allow for tax abatements for those developers that put in housing that is, it has many of the same amenities, but it may be smaller, and it provides an incentive for lower cost housing.
I'll say for Charlotte, as we go into our next phase of transportation planning and this referendum that we have, we will be much more aggressive on affordable housing in our corridors and where we are putting transit and transportation improvements. It is well intended, I think, back in the 90s, but did not really get executed, and everybody sees the missed opportunity with that. So that's probably the biggest one. The other thing I will say that a lot of people don't necessarily see is that when you do have a public-private partnership, a lot of times, like we mentioned the Pearl earlier with the medical school, there's always going to be a component of affordable housing in those projects. Recently, there was a $40+ million investment made into Ballantyne, repositioning an office, really district, into something that was more sustainable as an employment hub. As a component of that, though, affordable housing and workforce housing is brought into that project. So that's another one that it's not a big policy. It's not going to move the needle significantly, but I think it's an understood doing business in our community is if you're really going to garner that public investment, you're going to have to put some effort towards the housing component.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that housing at that level with the public investment. And then there's also just the need, you hear from developers all the time, that they want to build more housing, but for whatever reason, they feel kind of stymied a lot of times. Are there things that local governments can do or that the private sector can do to just, how can we get more housing built? What are some of the answers there?
One thing I'll just say really quickly is I think there needs to be, between local government and housing development, there needs to be a better understanding of kind of how the development side works, from my time inside public sector, I've just seen too many times somebody said, well, just add more units to that, and not really understanding how the pro forma works and what it takes to actually get the development done and provide those units, especially if they're below market rate. So really some education can be a solid first step in my mind. I see it time and time again across this market.
Well, the other thing we've done, I'm going to take advantage of the gap and the microphone handoff, is parking requirements. The reduction in the number of parking spaces that are required, which is that's a literal savings, and it's very, very helpful. It helps induce more density, which we think is a great program, even though people rail against it. And I think that those types of things that reduce costs and speed up the process. Time is money.
I'm just going to add to that because that's a great point. We had a project here in Charlotte that was in our uptown. I think we were going to be able to achieve 60 affordable housing units out of it. And what we decided is the same amount of money, if we dispersed it across the city, we could get more than 200. And it's not a political decision that people wanted to make because we need more affordable housing in our center city. But when you look at the numbers, you gotta count the number of rooftops. And it was all around parking.
So, Kit, you actually referred to this earlier, and it's something that we're looking at throughout all our municipalities, and that's the permitting process. It just takes so long for a developer to decide to do a project, to get it through all of the various processes, and the permitting processes. You do this permit, and you got to get that one done before that one. You got to get this one done before that one. And I think it's actually Mecklenburg County that has a very good permitting process to where those permits run concurrently. And that's more, how it should be done, because you can really streamline that process. And that time, time is money for the developers. So that's the first thing. The other thing you mentioned was the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinances. I know we all love to have kind of certain requirements and standards of housing projects or whatever and building codes. But when you do that, you stifle innovation, creativity, and we get very cookie cutter results, which I'm sure you guys don't necessarily love, for sure. And we've just have got to kind of break that mindset down that, a certain style home can work in this neighborhood, but it may not work there. And saying one size fits all, if we do it in the county, we're going to do it throughout the county, or if we're going to do it in the city, it's throughout the city. We've got to get out of that mindset, and we even need, in many cases, we need the state to allow our local communities to make decisions at the local level and not necessarily be dictated.
I hear a lot of that in North Carolina, too, I think. You're speaking to a room full of realtors from North and South Carolina. Is there anything that they can do or any messaging that they can adopt to people that they're talking with to help with some of these issues?
It used to be, and I remember back in my photo finishing days when I owned a photo finishing lab, every realtor came in to get their film developed. Well, then you got digital, and you didn't need that anymore. And it's been involved in the chamber, and every realtor was involved in the chamber because you'd come to the chamber because it's where you could build relationships, build networking. And then social media came along, and you didn't need us for that same thing anymore. But now we're at a unique position to where we need each other. We need to work together to try to solve some of these things. We have a common problem. And we can be much more effective in telling our stories together if we're going together to county councils, to local municipalities, working together. So whether it's individually you getting involved with the chamber, get your realtor group, your association, your realtor teams to have a representative, more involved in the advocacy side of the Chamber of Commerce, I think can be very effective. There's just a real power in us going hand in hand, singing some of the same songs together instead of taking a different approach.
The realtors have been very supportive in working with us as strategic partners. Especially advocacy is one of the things that chambers do that can be very helpful. And while legislators are happy to hear from the likes of us and our staff members, they also want to hear from individual business people who have stories that they can tell and who can back up the needs. in addition, when we're doing things like bond campaigns, the realtors in our area have stepped up to make contributions from PACs, which is incredibly important in funding a campaign and super helpful also in getting the word out about the merits of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you all see from the front lines, what residents are experiencing, whether they're looking at this market or they're leaving or they're just moving within the market. Every time I talk to realtors, I really want to understand that our NIMBYs typically tend to be a couple of loud voices and don't really represent an entire community, a neighborhood, or the need for some of the bond campaigns that you just mentioned, like transportation or schools. And so you guys are on the front lines. We need to hear from you what you're hearing.
And absolutely. And if there's any realtors that represent that York County area in here, raise your hand. Thank you. And the reason I say thank you is because when we started our Pennies for Progress marketing campaign this past year to get that approved, which was approved with the highest percentage that we've ever had, 72% of voters voted to approve that tax on themselves for our road improvements. But when we started, we did some research. And one of the number one ways that we were worried about all the new people that had moved in the last 10 years, they won't even know about Pennies for Progress. Well, they did. And when we asked them, how did you learn about this? They learned about it from their realtor when they were buying their home. That was a powerful message for us. So thank you for that.
We've talked a lot about housing here the last few minutes. I do want to say we will take questions at the end of this session. We'll do that in a few minutes. But I want to move on to a different topic. And that's, one of the reasons that people move here is because there are plenty of jobs. So knock on wood, so far so good. But, the unemployment rate is low. We have companies that are moving here. What is the outlook in each of your communities for keeping that momentum going? Are we seeing... It seems to me, at least in Charlotte, we've seen maybe fewer of those office relocations that we traditionally had. But then there's a lot of upside too. There's manufacturing out in the region. There are a number of different things going on. Could you just sort of give us an overview of what the job scene is like where you are?
Surprisingly, for 2025, the office market has been really strong. I would say for our 14 counties, it's strongest between Mecklenburg and York. And we're talking thousands of jobs, bigger volume of jobs than I've seen in a long time. Part of that, I think, is pent-up demand for companies that, might have been considering something just before COVID, now ready to make a change. Some of that is a reflection of people moving during COVID and companies saying they need to reposition kind of where they're located and how they're located. So I'm really bullish on the office side, whereas for years I haven't been. The manufacturing side is still strong by all means, I think across the region. Site readiness becomes more of a conversation with that, really having sites that are ready. North Carolina, yesterday, Commerce said for this region, so I'm losing my South Carolina counties on this, they projected a job growth of 150,000 jobs, and that actually the job growth would slow. I don't like that answer. So I'm going for 300,000 over a 10-year period.
You're going to manifest that just by saying it here on stage. It's going to happen.
We're going to 3. It's my moonshot. We're going to 300,000 over a 10-year period. I mean, that keeps up with the growth. One of the differences is we don't have to talk about talent being here anymore. People and companies know the talent is here, and so that's why they're coming here. Where we have to blur the lines of boundaries and borders is more in the workforce space. But we're leaning in heavier than we ever have on financial services and life sciences and healthcare. Well, there's a huge healthcare demand. We have a huge opportunity in the space of life sciences to really put our region on the map in a significant way, and it's happening right now. Some of the momentum with Eli Lilly up in Cabarrus County or the Pearl here right down the street. We have a huge opportunity with that to grow in jobs. So it's where my 300,000 comes from.
And do you have any secrets you would like to share with this group about things that are about to be announced?
Tony, I can't tell you that. We do have a good pipeline, and again, I'm really encouraged by it more so than I have been in years.
Well, and so do we, but not nearly to the degree that, by the way, I worked for the Charlotte Chamber for 17 years. So I have great affection for the growth that has occurred here. In Asheville, we are seeing solid economic development project activity and some of it occurring from Europe. So that has been very interesting given all the discussions on the national level about tariffs and things of that nature. We really lean into advanced manufacturing, and we're really also working hard on the workforce part in terms of trying to take people who are in low-wage jobs to help them reskill. We had a program called Accelerate Buncombe that we piloted that if you're working a low-wage job, you can't really stop that job to get the additional credential training that you would need to get a job that has a more established career track. So what we did was raise the money and find grant funding to match it that allowed us to pay stipends to people in those low-wage jobs so that they could stop and get the training and then worked actively with the businesses that were hiring to match those folks into jobs. Some of those folks had experience with the judicial system or may have had other barriers to employment from the past. So we worked specifically in helping the employers train to be prepared to help those folks get into those jobs and succeed in them for the long term, which helps close that gap that we have, especially in a more expensive market like Asheville. So we're very proud of that work and we're doubling down on it. We're also working on expansion of trades that are related to manufacturing that can be helpful in supplying the people that we're trying to recruit.
And Tracy, you could chime in and probably speak more elegantly to, I can't even say the word to this than I can. But, in Rock Hill, the city is doing great things as far as trying to improve their opportunities for new business growth. Palmetto Research Park is kind of I'd say kind of seizing on that health sciences train. And, it's a 211-acre site, if I'm not mistaken, that can be built all together. And I think 246 acres all total. It has its own interstate interchange. So, easy on, easy off. And that's a rare thing to have in the Charlotte market. So we expect big things out of that. I think you'll also, for realtors kind of looking at where other job opportunities are going to come in York County, watch the growth continuing to bleed south down I-77. Each interchange has strong interest right now all the way to the Chester County line and then really on into Chester County. So all those areas are going to be really, really ripe for additional housing, additional subdivisions to go up to support that.
Could you each paint a picture for me of what your area looks like in the next 5 to 10 years? Like what, as you look into that crystal ball, and obviously it depends on a lot of different factors, but what's the vision for the next 5 or 10 years from where you are?
Well, number one, we aren't going to be dealing with a natural disaster anymore. We're going to have worked our way largely through that process. But we will have doubled down on regionality in a big way. We're currently working on the Futures Factory, which is a collaboration between 6 community colleges and 5 universities, including UNC Charlotte and NC State, around engineering, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, AI, to create a virtual campus that's a research university that we don't currently have. So we're going to be continuing to work harder and more together around workforce preparation. You'll see more greenways and trails built throughout the area to enhance not just quality of life, but also our outdoor industries, including outdoor manufacturing of equipment. But it's going to it'll enhance residents' quality of life too. So I think between all those things, the fundamentals are great in Asheville and Buncombe County and Western North Carolina, and we're going to lean into them.
One of the one of the pillars of the county's recent 5-year strategic plan is quality of space. And you see that particularly York County right now building out parks. There's a new 2,200 acre park along the river called Catawba Bend. That's going to add to the outdoor opportunities, similar to the Close Greenway when you think about size of space with, can't even remember the number of miles of trails and biking trails that will be through that space. The city of Rock Hill is also really, along with the town of Fort Mill and the city of York, are all looking very uniquely at what sets them apart as a community from others. And I think that's kind of important that we all kind of recognize the need to do that throughout the Charlotte region, is that every one of our communities and cities are unique within this greater space that we call the Charlotte MSA. And I think you're going to see more and more of that over the next 5 years. And I think it's also really cool when you look at the Carolina Thread Trail that started more than 30 years ago, that's linking all these communities, and you see almost every county in that whole 14 county region trying to build those trails out more and more to add to that connectivity. And I think we'll see some neat things there. I also think we're really starting to see innovation take charge in a whole different way. Particularly in Rock Hill, in partnerships with the city and Winthrop University, some of the activity they have there. So we'll see a lot more of that, I think, in the next 5 years.
And I'd weave together what they both said. First of all, I told you what my 10-year vision was, which is 300,000 new jobs to the region, which is a lot to accomplish. But then weaving together the regionalism. I'm really encouraged right now, especially between York County and Mecklenburg County. We're sharing ideas about how to connect greenways. We're sharing ideas on microtransit. And to see that grow out throughout the region, I think is really promising. The other thing that Kit talked about was workforce. Right now, if I go around county to county, for Charlotte, in this region, I see a lot of counties individually talking about the resources that they have for workforce. I really would love to see those lines blurred, and we think as a region, we operate as a region when it comes to workforce and training and thinking about the future of our workforce that's not only bringing new talent, but is really training up the talent that is here and growing here, so to keep that talent here.
What is it going to take for the Charlotte region to work together a little more cooperatively than it has in the past?
I'm seeing it. I was telling Kit earlier that if you go back 7 years ago, I said when the alliance was formed, everybody was so scared that the region would kind of fall apart. And so we said it's 14 counties. We got to treat everybody the same. That's just not the case. And I think we have to meet all the counties and the respective communities within the counties where they are. Some want to be bigger communities. Some don't, and how we can weave that together. And then we have to understand that Charlotte Mecklenburg is just different than the rest of the region, and that's okay. And getting Charlotte Mecklenburg, because I've been on the inside of it, to say, you know what, it's not Charlotte's airport, it's the region's airport, right? And it works for both states. I've seen better cooperation from Charlotte to Raleigh, but I would love to see more of that cooperation in North Carolina, South Carolina sides. And I think we get there. Some of it's happening at the local level, like I said, that's really exciting.
That's it for today with the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. Thanks for listening. And thanks again to Canopy Realtor Association for letting us share this discussion. And many thanks to our podcast sponsor, AC Creative Collective. This Charlotte-based business specializes in marketing services, strategy, and learning and development services that help businesses thrive. Check them out at www.accreativecollective.com for innovative solutions tailored to your needs. This episode of the Charlotte Ledger Podcast is produced by Lindsay Banks.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.